Hello and welcome to the fifth in the series of Talks with Jane. And today's talk is hosted by BestCities Global Alliance. And the topic on our minds today is future foresight. And I'm delighted that we have the formidable Karen Bolinger to take on this subject. Karen, hello, welcome to the studio.
Hello, thank you. Love a home studio.
Absolutely. So I think possibly the hardest part of today's discussion is going to try and keep it to 15 minutes. So I'm good we got a bit of a discussion before we hit record. But a brief introduction to Karen. She's not only a successful CEO, she is also a skill in connecting communities with a broad stakeholder engagement that not only means that the destination wins when conferences come to different cities, but also the organizer or the association who are bringing all those delegates and speakers, etc., to the destination. So first of all, Karen, you're holding a couple of superb industry roles, and I just want to find out what not only drives you in these positions, but any opportunities that have appeared during this pandemic.
Yes, thank you, Jane, for welcoming me. And I am thrilled and very honoured and privileged to be holding two roles of what I would think of two as some of the preeminent organisations. So I've obviously got Strategic Advisor to BestCities, of which I've been a member and a partner of for 9 years now, actually maybe 10 years. And PCMA, of which I've also been actively involved in more for the Asia Pacific region. So I guess, what drives me to participate in those, well, I think business events gets in your blood a little bit. I've had a very broad history and a long history across tourism and hospitality, but business events has probably been the area that I kind of lean and go back to, and I love it because I actually think of what it does for us. So we talk a lot about the legacy and the benefits beyond tourism of business events, and I think that that's probably what drives me to be aligned to both of these entities. And the things that are going on at the moment, all the opportunities that are there, really a lot of it's actually I'm a bit of a out of adversity comes opportunity. So I think, the world is being shaken up and it's not great in so many ways. But I think the lens that you put on it and how you approach it actually can open up some opportunities. And I was bizarrely enough talking to a friend the other day about, the tourism industry and should I be in it still? And then I was talking to her saying, I could actually turn the skills that I have into other businesses, because what I do in the strategic planning realm, in fact, can cross any business. So I guess it's actually putting that lens on it rather than having the, oh my goodness, my life has crashed, to, well, it has, but what am I going to do about it? And so I think the opportunities are about what skills you have that you can apply across a broader range, but also, business events, exciting time to reinvent.
Yes, absolutely. I listened to a really interesting I think it was a podcast with the OECD, and it was Jack van der Broek, who is the CEO of Randstad, and he was talking about the whole reskilling and looking at the skills you've got. And he put it into three areas. He said, use your head, use your hands, or use your personality. And they are the three areas that you really need to look at. But the transferable skills, I absolutely agree. So many skills that you've got from what you're doing, how can you actually use it in different ways? Now, we're here today to talk about future foresight, and the practice of future foresight really is to help organisations develop a strategy for the future while gathering the knowledge that we can from the current situation to consider plausible future scenarios. Currently in the meetings industry, we have to focus on the here and now and looking after our community, because really from one day to the next, business events was almost made illegal. However, we do hear that it's so important to look into the future. So I would welcome your thoughts on and findings perhaps on the future of business events. Not an easy question, sorry.
No. And you know what? I think it also depends on who you talk to as to their view on it. So obviously there's a lot of research being done around, and I'll put the PCMA hat on for a minute. We did do an extensive piece of research, and the three big things that came out of that were the reskilling / upskilling, if you like, business models. What are we doing about business models? What do they look like? And then, of course, the participant experience. So I guess with all of that knowledge and intel, I'd be sitting there saying, from a future perspective, then when we come back, it won't be, let's get back to a little bit of the normal and we'll, just have wider aisles and clean venues. It will, in my view, actually have a different look to it. And that's partly to do with actually how the next generation are coming through and consuming their interaction and their media. So we talk a lot about this it will never replace face-to-face ever. So I think just take that off the table. But I think it's how we meet, why we meet, and when we meet that will change. And a lot of that for me is actually around, the virtual will be definitely embedded into what we actually do. And so if that's the case, then when we actually get together, why are we actually getting together and what does that look like? So I think gone are the days of the traditional forums of, big keynote speaking for 90 minutes in an auditorium and then we all go off to the next session or the coffee break. It will actually be maybe the work is done pre and the networking and the collaboration is what actually occurs at an event, because that's where the gold is. That's what we talk about, the true value of business events. That when we talk about legacies left behind, that's the stuff. People who are curing COVID, and I'll use that as an example, are collaborating globally. Now, often they will have met or been involved in some of their research findings in their groups through conferences that they've actually met at. So this platform actually helps accelerate that, but it still won't replace that face-to-face. So I just think we've got to have a different lens on what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a great study that Thomas did in Copenhagen about the impact of academic events. And you can't create that buzz and that network sitting behind a screen. The knowledge maybe can be disseminated, but that actual discussion and those partnerships and those real reasons why people get together in their communities to help advance science has to happen in these gatherings. Now, when it comes to destinations, I heard when you were speaking actually at City Nation Place, someone said successful ecosystems will win. Can you share what you're seeing perhaps in the industry for destinations and this ecosystem piece, and how that perhaps will be more important moving forward?
So the ecosystem to me is we've had it in the traditional, what I would term the value chain. So we know hotels, suppliers, producers, all of that are actually in the value chain. But the broader ecosystem is really around productivity and livability of destinations and getting that government engagement in it. Now I think we all know business events and we're very much aligned in the tourism bucket, whether we like it or we don't like it. And therefore we're not necessarily seen as a key economic powerhouse. And I think that this COVID has actually indicated, and this goes back to one of those opportunities again, that actually, when people stop coming to your destination, stop coming to your cities, it actually has a significant impact, not only financially, but actually the productivity in your destination and the livability. So if you've got no life in the middle of your destination, it's a heartless place. And, productivity diminishes. People then find joy in ways of connecting through other means. And so I think that therein lies the opportunity of destinations actually really having this opportunity now to reform some of that and change the narrative and actually have a different conversation with not only government, but the city stakeholders, which is, big corporations. It's the lifeblood of your city, the arts community, the creative guys who are sitting in there. So I think there's great opportunity in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we want people to return to cities. This is the major driver. We can have our communities, but we really need people to come from other destinations to help with advancements and everything as well, and the experts from outside. Is there any tips regarding future foresight that would help organizations at the moment who are dealing with the current situation, but who need to really play a role in the future to ensure relevance, I suppose?
Yeah, I think tips. I think it's actually about using this time to stop and take stock of what you actually do have, and I think some of the things, as you know, even through Best Cities that we talk about with this whole legacy piece, is about what are your assets in your destination that you can actually turn into real benefits and powerhouses for you going forward. And I think we got on the wheel before of really looking through a facilities lens, the infrastructure that we have, and not necessarily putting the what else could we be. And so if that was me, I'd be thinking from a destinations perspective. And I'll use Melbourne as an example of, we knew we had some of the strongest medical, community in our city, and that was Australia-wide. And I think that was set up many, many years ago through the government, setting up really strong research institutes and investing in them. So we recognise that for us, that was probably one of our biggest strengths and assets. How do we actually then bring that to life? How do we actually connect it in with the academic community? How do we connect it into government? How do we bring the business community to the table? And so it wasn't by design, 30 years ago when they built all of that, but it's certainly played into a really good, strong card for us going forward. And I think if destinations go back to that and then really think about what their unique point of difference is, they can actually start to build on that as they come out of it. And that then ticks a lot of boxes from economic stability, building sustainability, and that sustainability isn't just about the CSR component, it's about sustainable models, and then the livability and productivity that come with that. So I think there's, if that was me, I'd be spending that time doing that research. And it's easy to say when you're actually more involved in wondering how you stay afloat, but it actually means you have to carve the time out to put that thinking aside now, because when we open up, I think there'll be pent-up demand and we will open up very differently, but I think we actually have to be ready with open arms and a good strong message to bring people back into our destinations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is wonderful what we're doing at Best Cities, because it is all about legacy and impact. And it's also being able to share with the International Association community how coming to that specific destination can help them get a little bit closer to their mission while leaving a lasting legacy afterwards. So it's great to hear you saying we're on the right route. So looking forward to developing this further and creating ongoing dialogue. There's a couple of things I just want to finish on, and lockdown has not been easy for any destination, and certainly not for you sitting in Melbourne, being a social butterfly that you are. I'm just interested to know, have any new habits or have you adopted any new activities during lockdown you want to share?
Apart from having a very clean, organised house, you know what? I actually did decide to take up one of my old hobbies that I haven't touched in probably 20-something years, which is painting. And the challenge being is, normally I would like to have gone to a studio, but I've had to do it online. And it's been certainly interesting. But you know what it does is just take you out of your zone and into a different place. And so you're not thinking about everything else that's going on. So it's nice. I have one over here, but I won't show it because it's nowhere near finished. And I looked at it and went, oh no, it needs a bit of work.
Needs a bit of work. Okay, we'll wait for the grand reveal another time, maybe in part two. That's what they do they not? On TikTok, they have part one and part two. Anyway,
correct.
One other thing I want to ask you is, during this time of growing connections, which I think we all are, I do feel that it seems to be easier to connect with people and they're actually quite willing to speak to you, which is very nice. But during this time when we're also trying to look outside of our bubble and be inspired by, I don't know, different areas, different communities, all these different podcasts you end up listening to that are nothing to do with business events, but you find quite inspiring. Is there anybody or an organization that you want to share that we should be watching or following?
Well, mine's a little bit odd because I think I posted on Twitter a couple of weeks ago about my COVID crushes, and it's a little bit more about receiving information and looking forward to what they're about to say. So here in Australia, we've had Dr. Norman Swan, and he has been, and I think he almost kind of gathered his own name, apart from our Chief Health Officer in Australia, in Melbourne, who's a very good-looking man and speaks common sense. But Dr. Norman Swan was the first one out of the cabs. He's the ABC guy, and he just called it like it was, made hard simple for us. And then his son is Jonathan Swan, who interviewed President Trump most recently, and was a little bit challenging for President Trump, shall we say. So I said, I've got like a family COVID crush on both of those people, and it's because they're incredibly smart, put what are complex issues into very simple terms, and you almost look forward to watching them. So I get, well, not almost, you do look forward. It's like, oh, if Dr. Swan's on, I'm going to pay attention now. So yes, my COVID crushes, there you go, revealed.
Brilliant. There we go. Thank you. Certainly in this time of digital engagement, we want things to be a bit simpler and straight to the point. So if someone does that on the whole COVID issues, then that seems like good advice. Karen, thank you so much for joining me today. I think those of you who are watching this will have taken some good takeaways. Take stock. Look at what your value proposition is, and really consider, especially if you're a destination, really consider how you can work together along the lines of productivity and livability to ensure that we start bringing conferences back to cities. So on that note, Karen, thank you so much for joining me. See you soon, I hope.
Thank you. Yes, I know, in person. That would be very nice, wouldn't it? Thanks, Jane.
Bye.